And welcome into another edition of Spits and Suds, a Friday edition, right here on 105.3 The Fan. And the Friday edition means that our NHL insider joins us for our weekly visit. He's from Shap Shots. He's from EP Rinkside. You can watch him on film now. He has a few books out, the latest being We Win Here. And I want to intro this, and I really appreciate Hunter doing this. He says, Stars fans, even though we are at the top of our division, there's still not a full-time beat writer for the Dallas Stars. If you want some content, give some of these fan media podcasts some love. Hashtag Texas Hockey. And he posted Locked On Stars, at Starcastic, and then he put at GJ Spittle, but then he put parentheses, producer of Spits and Suds. So I bring on the host of Spits and Suds, Sean Shapiro. How are you, buddy?
I love that the people are listening and finding this, and
I love it.
it is I love that we can add a little bit we can put a little bit of not daily but the regularity, right, of hockey conversation into a team that is unfortunately, we've talked way too much about this on this podcast before, so we don't need to go too deep on it, but it's a team that I would love to see better covered in person, and the people who make those decisions. It's not the people who are covering the team; it's the people who make those decisions from a financial standpoint above them that lead to this. So I want to be clear on that. Please don't shoot the messenger on this. But it's I'm glad we can add something from a regular base here with this pod, and so it's good to be talking Friday, Gavin, and it's a weird day. It's a weird day to be talking to because it's right. You go 6 in a row, and then 2 this week that feel like maybe they should be of the 82 games in the season at this point right now. 2 back-to-back ones where you're like, oh God, what's happening here? And and we should probably talk about whether you should be having that reaction or not right now.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I do want to shout out that was at Hunter Dallas HKY. So that was Hunter. And it was really cool. At Stars fan Jake, when I said big stick tap for listening, he said, you and Shapiro always make my long drives entertaining. Yeah. So thank you guys, one and all. It's so awesome when you guys give us a unsolicited shout out and think of Spits and Suds as one of your hockey go-tos. But yeah, it's interesting. Like, one of the things I was talking about on the post-game show last night is this team over the years, and one of the things that Pete DeBoer's done a really nice job of has made this club more consistent. It was like a Six Flags ride for a while where you'd have up and down, up and down. And, what I'm seeing is, playing really well, and then all of a sudden the last 2 games, it's like, uh-oh. So I'm not ready to hit the panic button based on that, Sean, but I did see, for the most part, 1 period against Florida, period and a half, let's just say, and I'll also say about 2.5 periods last night of hockey that I'm not going to use the term lazy because lazy personifies other things, but just careless passing, not taking your man. It just seems like something's off the last few games.
And I wouldn't even say the last few games. I would say the last 4 periods, honestly.
Yeah.
The Florida game was that Florida game
was a clinic for a while. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a clinic, and then at the end it's basically, so we take the 3rd period of the Florida game, we take the game last night against New Jersey. That it's 4 periods of bad hockey is what it is. And it's something where you can take a look and you can kind of figure out, you can kind of overly panic about it and talk about it. But the other weird thing about this, Gavin, and it's just true in my mind on this, is we didn't learn anything new about it. And that's the spot where people will be like, when there's a reason for panic or whatever, it's because all of a sudden something happened that was like, oh man, we didn't realize we had this issue. That nothing is new about this, right? We know one of the reasons the Stars went and got Tanev was they needed to better defend in front of the
Yes.
net.
Yes.
That was an issue. One of the reasons their penalty kill, we've talked about it, their penalty kill needs to be better right now. That was the issue. Jake Oettinger has struggled this year. That happened. So these are all things that these are simple data points to a larger thing we talk about when the Stars go into the postseason and you say, okay, what are the red flags for the Stars not to win the Stanley Cup? It's those three red flags. There's lots of green flags, and I did not mean to make the color that work out that well with the team sponsor with the team jersey color, but it works really well. So there's lots of but those are the red flags that will pop up when you say like, oh man, the Stars are going into a playoff series. What do we have to worry about? Nothing about that has changed, and nothing about that has changed over the past two games. Now, we can talk about some of those things that can be worked on and tweaked and fixed and how you can try to fix those. And for example, on the penalty kill right now, I think, and this is something where we can talk about what should and shouldn't happen. And it's a very fascinating conversation right now, Gavin, is Miro Heiskanen doesn't kill penalties for the Stars, right?
Right.
Like as like you think one of the best defenders in the world and everything like that, and he doesn't kill penalties. And in a very odd, weird way, I think it's a good thing in his usage right now. And people are going to be like, oh, how do we have Yanni Hakanpää and S. Lindell killing penalties? If Miro Heiskanen was killing penalties right now, he would have an additional
4 or 5 minutes a game, 3 minutes a game.
Yeah. And all of a sudden, you'd be doing that. I want Miro Heiskanen killing penalties come playoff time when the games matter the most.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact this team is comfortably in the playoffs, I'm okay with Miro Heiskanen not killing penalties. Come playoff time when the games become bigger and I need my best players doing everything, that's when he's killing penalties. So it's kind of a weird thing, right? Like in the long-term run of usage, I don't mind Miro Heiskanen not killing penalties, but it leads to some things like last night where Yanni Hakanpää, or 2 nights ago, and we're against Florida, or kind of some of the things last night was just a weird, baffling game anyway. But the Florida game where Lindell and Hakanpää get exposed, when you're like, okay, well, your best defenseman's not even on the penalty kill. It's a very weird thing to kind of dissect and think about with all of this at the same time, because you want to win the Stanley Cup at the end. And I would argue right now, in a silly but true thing, the Stars' penalty kill being slightly worse right now because of personnel actually is probably better for them in May and June when Miro's able to play 35 minutes against Vegas in a Game 7.
That makes sense. And I do have a friend that says, like, all right, come playoff time, yeah, but Hakanpää, you watch. And I'm like, I just stay silent and say, okay. And that might be the case, Sean, but I'm also looking at a guy that might be at the end, if that makes sense.
He probably is at the end.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like you look at, and like last night, right? You go through and you look at the time on ice last night, and where is it? Like Hakanpää's played 15:31. 0 shorthanded time. I mean, last night the Stars didn't have a penalty. Like last night's actually a pretty good example of how things look. The Stars had no penalties didn't have any penalties last night, which is a good thing. And so Hakanpää, Suter, they played around 15, 16 minutes. Miro played 24-28. Come playoff time, you're going to take about 2 or 3 of those minutes from Hakanpää and Suter, and they're going to go to, and Miro's going to be at 27, 28, 29, and they'll be closer to 10, 12 minutes, and they'll be okay in that spot. That's kind of the thing where I'm trying to just say the sky isn't falling right now.
Yeah.
And it also leads to the other conversation, and it's fair just to bring up right now, is you have the whole Nils Lundkvist question.
Yes.
And this is, I don't think the Stars will do this, but just hear me out from a coaching perspective. When it comes to playoff time, and it comes to all of a sudden you're going to have Tanev and Heiskanen killing penalties and Lindell killing penalties, and all of a sudden you don't really have a role for Yanni Hakanpää anymore.
Right.
I don't think they'll switch it like that, but at least Pete DeBoer has that in his bag of there might be a better spot for this team the better role for Nils Lundkvist on this team come playoff time. And maybe that's when Nils Lundkvist becomes part of the thing. This is me. That is me. That's the overly optimistic part of me talking about this. I also just want to say the sky's not falling. This team is still good. They just need to fix some of those issues, and they need their goalie to be better. End of the day, Jake Oettinger needs to be better.
Yes.
That's just the reality. He wants to be considered one of the best goalies in the world, and right now he's a mid-level goaltender this season, and that's not good. At the same time, I'd argue Vegas won the Stanley Cup with a mid-level goalie last year with Adin Hill. So it's like it's not all of this with the Stars. It's easy to get all panicky and worried and everything like that. When at the same time, I could look across the league and there's about 27, 28 teams in the league right now that would kill to have the type of problems the Stars have.
Yeah.
So
I agree. I agree. That said, and I think this is the proper way to put it. I think number 4 needs to be better at times. I think number 14 needs to be better at times. And absolutely, Jake Oettinger needs to be better at times. It's interesting because I was talking last night, and my personal opinion, I'm like, yeah, let's throw Wedgewood in Saturday. However, I do remember Pete DeBoer on numerous occasions says that Jake Oettinger is one of the best goalies in the NHL at bounce backs, and he loves how he responds. So that had me thinking, and I think maybe we see Jake Oettinger tomorrow night.
I wondered if we might have Wedgewood tomorrow night before Oettinger got pulled, honestly, because like I think there's something to Oettinger played Tuesday, Thursday, right?
Yep.
And Wedgewood might have been in there Saturday, but the fact Oettinger got pulled means let's see, he only played what 23 minutes last night or whatever. So there's not as much recovery time. And B, you go back to him and you give him your reset. Like that's like I think there's people might not like it and think, oh, Wedgewood earned that start or whatever. But I think at the end of the day, you need Oettinger to reset. So I think there's certain potential value in Oettinger being back in the net on Saturday.
And let me say this, and Sean, feel free to agree or disagree. I look at just like any backup position. Scott Wedgewood is like a backup quarterback. Kudos to Scott Wedgewood. He's been terrific this year. And when Jake Oettinger went down, he stepped up. The statistics were good, and they were winning a lot of those games. But it wasn't like we saw a Scott Wedgewood like standing on his head and, oh, my goodness. But he played very well, and he's played very well. Every time he's come on, he has been an above-average backup, in my opinion, and I think he'll get paid. I think he'll get a nice increase next year. But that said, I think for those out there that say it's time for Wedgewood, I think you have to take a step back and understand if you go far in the playoffs, you need Jake Oettinger.
I wrote about this earlier this week at my site over at Shap Shots about Wedgewood. And one of the things that I looked at about this is there's a stat. Essentially, there's a stat that I use for goaltending because I think it's really hard for a goalie to quote unquote win games actually because you can't score goals, right? It's just the reality. You can't win games, but you can definitely lose games as a goalie. And for me, one of the stats I look at that describes Jake Oettinger's season is called RBS. It stands for really bad starts. It's a stat that was coined by Rob Volman, who was an analyst who now works for the Kings. And essentially, a really bad start by that definition is a save percentage below 85% in a game. And if your goalie gives you that type of performance, you probably only have a 10% chance of winning the game. Jake Oettinger, before the Florida game and before he had another one last night, before he had the Florida game, he was sorry, let me make sure I've got okay. The one before his start last night gave him 10 really bad starts for the year, which is career high. He had 8 last year. He had 5 in his second NHL season, 3 in his first NHL season. And that is 10 really bad starts in 43 games. That's a 1 in 4 game where your goalie is costing you. He's also had some pretty good games too. Meanwhile, Scott Wedgewood, for his entire career, only has 13 really bad starts. His entire career. He's only had four in his time with Dallas. And it's not that now Scott Wedgewood, to me, you look at it as Scott Wedgewood doesn't win you games. He is and it's the reason he's a backup, is he's never going to be that guy that goes out and is going to go all world, but he also doesn't lose you games. And it's one of the reasons he's a great 1B in my mind, because you know what you're getting. I don't think you want to like, it's not Wedgewood time. People say it's Wedgewood time. It's Wedgewood time if all emergency glass breaks, because I don't think Scott Wedgewood is good enough. I don't think Scott Wedgewood is going to be good enough to win you a Stanley Cup. Right now, Jake Oettinger isn't either. Jake Oettinger has to get it together. But Scott Wedgewood, to me, is a good goalie that doesn't lose you games, but he also doesn't win you games in the playoffs. And it's kind of the interesting spot he's in. It's a reason he's probably going to make more money next year. You know what you're getting. But there's a part of Wedgewood's game that Oettinger needs to find in his own of how do you limit the damage when the damage is bad. So
that's a great point. The LA Kings, by the way, play tonight against the Chicago Blackhawks, so it'll be a back-to-back in Chicago, and then they will come to Dallas and play tomorrow night, so Stars should have the fresher legs. We always talk about Sean's book, We Win Here. Sean also penned a terrific book, which I know a lot of Stars fans have felt more educated about the team, called 100 Things Stars Fans Should Know and Do Before They Die. I love the book. I reference the book a lot when I'm looking up past Stars, and part of that book is a foreword by Mike Modano. What were your interactions with Modano as he gets kind of immortalized tomorrow with one of two statues now at the AAC?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I wasn't at the spot where I covered Mike here as a player, because it was still his last season was the 2011 season, if I have that right off the top of my head. But I interacted with him quite a bit in working on basically my history book on the Stars, the 100 Things Stars Fans Should Know book. And it's for all of the time, like we even I've talked before about how people don't like how he works for the Wild or whatever, and we've had that nuanced conversation before. He's he is a huge part of the history and loves the history of hockey in Texas. He loves that he was part of bringing it here and everything like that. And just because some personal roles weren't the exact way he wanted them after his career and everything like that, it doesn't take away from how much he values what the Stars meant to his career and what he meant to the Stars. And so it's really good to see the statue. And for me, that was one of the most difficult parts of the book, honestly, was kind of sticking the landing on the forward. Kind of a fun backstory on this was I had Mike was in the spot where the family was growing. They were super busy. We had talked and we are trying to get it, and we are trying to get everything together for the forward. And he had given me kind of like that, like, yeah, I'll do it answer, but we hadn't actually gotten the time to sit down and get it done yet. And he was it was something around the time one of the kids were bored. He was super busy, and it had gotten to the point where I had actually gotten Jamie Benn to agree to write the forward as a backup. Believe it or not,
Nice.
believe it or not, I had actually for as much as anyone wants, I know sometimes people think Jamie and I don't see to eye or anything like that. Jamie and I had spoken to Jamie, and he had agreed to if Modano didn't come through, Jamie was going to write the foreword for the book. And thankfully, former Stars PR guru, now assistant GM for the Sharks, Tom Holy, he helped me set up. It was the Stars where it was a game in Arizona. Mike was living there still, and Tom went out of his way to make sure that Mike and I connected in person at that point, so we got everything done, and that's how the forward got done and came to be and everything like that. So that's kind of the backstory, and it's a little bit of history there, where if not for number 9, number 14 would have been writing the forward for the book. So I'm excited for Stars fans to be able to have the statue out there, because I think about this a lot, where it's the touch point of history when you're a Stars fan 10, 15 years from now, and you bring your kid to the game, and there's the Madonna statue, and all of a sudden you have the like, and the kid sees the statue, and it becomes you get to relive Stars history. You get to bring it up. It allows history to live on. I'm sure Mavs fans have the same experience. No one right now forgets Dirk, but 10 years from now, you're going to want people to remember what Dirk did, and that's what that statue does. And that's to me is the statues are history and honors that allow you to let stories move from generation to generation of fandom. And I think that's one of the great things about the unveiling on Saturday. I think there'll be some great old stories told, and it allows kind of an era of Stars history to get its proper recognition the minute you walk up to the arena. And that was always kind of missing before. Like when you go to you go to a game of Montreal, you see all the statues. I I'm reminded of what Rocket Richard did. Reminded of what Guy Lafleur did. And you go through and you see those statues and you look that up. You go to LA and you see they've got there's the statue there's the Gretzky statue. There's the statue that's got the cup celebration. There's those moments where Kings fans, even if they're 5 years old, they can look at it and be like, oh, something cool happened.
Yep.
They can learn about that. That's to me is the touch point for this Modano statue, where it puts hockey and kind of hockey and history on display in a proper space. And it's good that it's going to be right across from what Dirk is. It's going to be the two most iconic, um, two most undisputable number ones for their sports in Dallas get to be side by side. I'm not saying they're the most iconic. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, Sean, I should have pulled the clip so it would be coming from him firsthand. But the other day when Craig and I were speaking, and he actually brought this up to a couple of Stars people, and, it didn't happen. Because I was joking with him because he'll be part of, the unveiling, and they'll have chairs up there. And I said, I think it would be you, Luds, if it was a lawn chair and if there was a six-pack, and he goes, six-pack, that's it? He's like, no. He's like, I want a cooler. And just Luds kicking back because that's Luds. And that spurred on a conversation. He goes, you know what I thought would be a good idea is they show on the big screen when the fans are in the building, prior to the game, the statue being unveiled. And a lot of people think that it's going to be, the jersey in the wind because he's so fast. And all of a sudden the arena goes dark. Spotlight comes on. Here comes Modano one more time and does a lap around the ice. And I was like, man, that's a pretty cool thing, Craig. I know it's tough to pull that stuff off, but that crowd would go absolutely ape if it's like one more time Modano flying around the AAC.
It's also like other teams have done that. Like when the Penguins retired Yager's number,
yes,
Yager went out for warmups. When the Blackhawks have done the one more shift thing, which I think is kind of cool, where they have a former player on the night they get honored, they take warmups. Like, how cool would that be? Like you reveal the statue, and I don't obviously it's who knows. And Mike Modano is also. Mike Modano doesn't look like how old is he now? Is he actually 50 now? How old is he? Like, he doesn't actually, he still looks like
he could go 32. A couple shifts, no doubt. Yeah.
Like, how great would that be if that was the statue gets revealed, and then for warm-ups, they're all going to go out in Modano number 9 jersey. I'm imagining they're all going to go out in Modano number 9 jerseys, probably with the star, with the old star design that they did for Yuri Lettinen's retirement ceremony. And how great would it be if number 9 was actually the one leading them out for warm-ups?
Amazing.
The place would go nuts. It would be. That is the type of stuff that if you're Brad Alberts, Stars president, if you're listening to this, since I know you occasionally do, you can put the check in the mail for the idea. It's okay, I like it. Go ahead.
That's why I should have pulled it, because when Lud said that, I'm not kidding, I had chills. And I'm like, man, that's a brilliant idea. And he's like, I know. And I can hear him, because when he does the podcast, he's watching Match Game as well. So I'm like,
Yeah.
this guy, what a multitasker, just coming up with a brilliant like no one thinks it would come out of Luds, like, mechanics, but it was just wow. That would be awesome. So man, so the book that Mike Modano wrote the foreword for is 100 Things Stars fans should know and do before they die. It's going to be a terrific day, and hopefully the Stars can respond tomorrow. You need to go, but in the news this week, Sean, Atlanta, apparently 2 groups now, possibly working to get a franchise. We can talk about it further, but I'm just shocked at all the buzz about a franchise that has already been in a city twice.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's been quite, I mean, it's, I think, I mean, the big thing with Atlanta, and we'll leave it on this, is
Yes.
it's not necessarily the market for Atlanta. It's more so there's 2 key things. There's ownership and location are going to be important. I think they have it seems to me like the ownership is going to be good. I think that's important because that's really what doomed the Thrashers. I mean, the Thrashers had better attendance than the Coyotes ever did. But the other thing that will be interesting to me is the location of the rink and how it will work, because I looked up the city, and I'm drawing a blank on the name of the technical suburb where they're looking at bringing the rink to, and it is 40 minutes from downtown Atlanta. It is about an hour from the airport, and so it is. If it is the right spot, I hope they've done their research. That's the right spot. That would be great. But at the same time, I often worry, and I look at other past
Ottawa,
experiences.
Arizona.
Ottawa's the best example, I think, because one where it's a Canadian city, and you go so far from downtown, and you kind of lose. So for Atlanta, I truly believe Atlanta can work with the right ownership group. I think the size of the city is good enough. I think there's a good. I think we've seen here in Dallas, we've seen in Nashville, we've seen in Carolina that hockey in the Sun Belt works. You gotta get the right ownership, and you gotta get the right building. You gotta learn from the mistakes the Coyotes have made is the big one, and we will see if they do that. So
yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks for answering that question. I know you have to go. Thanks for being our NHL insider. He's Sean Shapiro. Please support him at Sean Shapiro on Twitter. EP Ringside, D Magazine. He does some great articles for, and of course, where he posts a lot of analytics and breakdowns, which I love reading. Shap Shots is his Substack. Sean, have a good weekend. Thank you so much. We'll talk to you next week.
Always fun, Gavin.
Okay, enjoy the Mike Modano ceremony, everyone, and then we'll talk to you tomorrow night after the LA Kings game. I'm Gavin Spittle. Thank you, one and all, for supporting, I can't say it enough, Spits and Suds on 105.3 The Fan. Have a great day.